Welcome to another episode of the Bandwagon Sports Podcast. Today, joining me is Adil Hidari, and we're going to be talking about Clippers versus Spurs, Game 7. Adil, how's it going?
Pretty good, Faiyaz. It's been a while since we did one of these, so it's good to be back.
Yeah, definitely. Glad to have you. So let's get started. What did you think of this first round series between the Clippers versus the Spurs, which ended last night with a 2-point win by the Clippers?
You know what? I thought it was a fascinating game seven and overall series in general. When you can take a seven-game series and bring it down to one possession and like everything to play for, as a neutral watching, it was just entertainment at the highest level in terms of sports. And I was telling a friend of mine, I'm actually really glad the Bulls aren't part of this kind of series because that would have been an absolute wreck in such a close series. So, as a neutral, I mean, you can't ask for more than like a super close seven-game series. Basketball at its highest level, one or two plays basically deciding the outcome and establishing legacies in terms of, we'll come to that on both sides. So, fantastic.
Yeah. Honestly, this should not have been a first round series.
Agreed.
Just watching last night as a guy that really hates the Spurs and is kind of a bandwagon Clippers fan, it was intense. My heart was pounding for a little bit. Uh, just how close this series was to me is crazy. I mean, every game it was a toss up. And in my previous podcast, when I gave my pick for Clippers versus Spurs, I said just flip a coin, and that's really what it was last night. It could have gone either way, and just seeing guys on both teams, unexpected heroes stepping up, it was great. And I don't think we're going to see a series, sadly, as good as this was in the rest of the playoffs. But I could be wrong, and I've been wrong before.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in terms of this is the kind of series you really wanted to see in the conference finals, or at least the second round, in terms of to be a first rounder like this, absolute epic battle between two teams. And I mentioned this yet last night. It's interesting. Doc Rivers has been part of two of the greatest first round battles in NBA history. This one, and then that '09 one against the Bulls, where obviously the Celtics were much more favored in that, but it ended up being a really close series. So, hats off to Doc. He knows how to win close first rounders, I guess.
I mean, I think we talked about this before. The Clippers do not win this series with Vinny Del Negro as their coach. As their GM, maybe they have a better roster, so the series is not that close. But from a coaching standpoint, definitely, I think Doc.
I don't know. Like, don't you think maybe Doc maybe read Vinny's Bleacher Report article about how to win Game 7? Like, Vinny gave the X's and O's breakdown of how you go about winning Game 7.
I kind of skimmed through that article, and I felt it was just generalizations. Expect unexpected guys to step up.
I think that article was more, look at me, I'm awesome, and I hope Doc loses tomorrow or today or whenever it was written.
You actually texted me that article, and when I was pulling it up, I was expecting kind of a blueprint or a schematic diagram of plays or something, and it was just like Vinny telling him how he lost a Game 7 and won a Game 7. But
yeah,
maybe along with the playbook, I'm sure he inherited from Vinny Del Negro, probably used a little bit of that, to get his guys going. So what did the Clippers do to win this series, and what did the Spurs do to lose it?
I think you kind of hit on it. I don't think you could say either of these teams, like, there wasn't much between them, right? So then you have to look at who makes one or two more plays. And I always say championship teams, or even teams that win big series, it really comes down to not necessarily the star players on both teams, because you kind of know what you're going to get from them for the most part, but which team can, in a 7-game series, can have a bigger impact from their role players. And in Game 7, Barney and JJ Redick came up big for the Clippers, hitting shots. I mean, you don't expect Barney to hit those shots, and he just came through. JJ was hitting these threes off screens, which like I haven't seen since God knows when, maybe since his Duke days. And
That was
that's
definitely
really
Duke.
the difference between the two teams.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Spurs lost this series. It just, like you said, came down to a handful of plays and guys stepping up. And I really felt for the Clippers to win Game 7, they needed somebody outside Chris Paul and Blake Griffin to step up. And they got that from, Matt Barnes especially. He hit some big threes, that game-tying three, had a couple key blocks, and played some really good defense on Kawhi Leonard, keeping him to like 12 to 13 points. But again, this series was so close. It could have, from either standpoint, the Spurs could have won this in 5 or 6. Clippers could have won this in 5 or 6, and it went 7.
Yep.
So that's really how I feel about that. It's definitely a shame both teams have to go home, or one team, the Spurs have to go home because they are definitely title worthy. I mean, they could have definitely.
Yeah, both of them were very, very good teams.
Yeah. So, yesterday we saw Chris Paul lay it all on the line, playing with a hurt hamstring and willing his team to victory, and Blake Griffin taking his game to another level. How do you think winning this game yesterday, affects each of their legacies?
I think between the two, this strengthens CP3's legacy a lot more than Griffin's. I mean, Griffin definitely had a big game. I think he had a triple-double. He had a really good series overall. CP3, the knock against him was always, can he do it in the playoffs? And, I know this is only the first round, but to pull one of those, he legitimately was injured, and he wasn't like faking it. He didn't pull out a wheelchair or anything like that. Like, he legitimately got injured. Tim Duncan mentioned it, and he was playing hurt out there, and he really did will himself through that game. And he hit some big shots in the fourth. He just refused to let go of the rope, as they say. Doc always has that term, don't let go of the rope. And CP3 was not letting go of that rope. And it was so fitting in a way for him to answer his critics by hitting the game-winning shot. I thought Spurs played really good defense on that play. And, CP's like hobbling away on one leg and just throws that ball over the top of Duncan, and it goes in, and it's a fantastic shot. And, I think it really does help Paul in terms of answering his critics. Again, I know it's only the first round, and, they could go and lose the Rockets in like 5 games or something, and then everyone's going to say the same thing again. But, that's a story for another day.
Yeah. I know Doc Rivers says, hold on to the rope. I think by the end of this game, Chris Paul's hands were probably full of blood. He was really hurting. Yeah, he really needed this game. He really needed to win this series. So often he's been compared to Tony Parker, some of the elite point guards, and winning this game definitely helps his legacy, that when he's in a big spot he can perform, and just being injured and willing this team to the victory adds to that. And overall in this whole series, 7 games, I've never seen him play this well. I mean, every mid-range jumper or three, when they needed it, he hit it. And yesterday, how he made that shot, I have no idea, but he made it. With Blake Griffin, granted, I think when we look back at this series, maybe it'll be bigger to Chris Paul's legacy than Blake Griffin's, because he had some bad moments in the series with turnovers. But overall, I've never seen him play better. I think the one thing, I definitely saw growth in Blake, where when he would get the ball, he wasn't looking to score. It's more he'd get the ball, size up the defense, and then make the right decision, whether that was a mid-range jumper, whether that was attacking or finding an open man. And I think going forward for Blake, I think this was the series where he put it all together.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just one last point on Chris there. In a way, it was almost fitting that he got himself such a big win against the Spurs. If you go back, what is it, 2008? Chris Paul was an MVP candidate and came up. I think he had didn't they have like a 60-win season or something really high? I
They
can't
won
remember
like 56 games.
something. Yeah, and they went really high, and they came and faced the Spurs, and the Spurs took them out in six, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's Chris Paul for you. You know, you can't get it done on the biggest stage." So to come back and do it against the Spurs, I think was a very big moment for him. And you could tell when the game was done, he really it kind of hit him there.
He definitely redeemed himself because I remember watching that game seven, 7 years back, and he didn't really play that well, enough for them to win. Again, this was Chris Paul in his third year. He was in diapers, but definitely this was he delivered when they really needed it most.
Big time.
Yeah. So looking at the Spurs, where do they go from here? There's a lot of questions. With Tim Duncan, will he or won't he come back? Key free agents, Danny Green, with Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan himself, whose contract expired, and Marco Bellinelli, as well as Kawhi Leonard's extension and potential free agent targets. So where do you think they go from here?
It's going to be an interesting summer for the Spurs. We've made it a habit of writing them off every year for half a decade, maybe more, maybe 7 years. We've been saying they're done.
My erasers, actually, I've had to erase it so many times. I need to buy a new one.
Exactly. So, I think they'll retool. Fully expect them to extend Leonard. The big thing for me will be is if Duncan returns for one last run, and I think he should, not just because of collecting paychecks, but he showed he's actually very, very good. I'm so surprised how well he can play at this level, at this age.
27 and 11 in a closeout game 7, and he was their go-to guy down the stretch.
Yeah, and you can't really ask for more. We're talking about a legend here, and the Spurs, their formula has always been, going back to '99, is have one or have their core, but then it's about surrounding them with the right role players who maybe don't find their footing in other teams, and they come here and somehow whether it's Green or a Bellinelli or even a guy like Diaw, who people thought he was out of the NBA when he was playing for the Bobcats, and he came and was so critical for them in last year's finals, and again he turned out to be a decent player for them this year. So I think the Spurs, their work's cut out for them. They're gonna have to go and search. I don't know who they'll go after. You mentioned free agency. I don't know how it works with a cap. Is if they give Kawhi the max, can they afford going after a big name like Aldridge? I don't know exactly what the deal is with that, but I look to see them to retool. I don't see the Spurs being a team that goes from a contender to just a lottery blow up team, So I think they might not be the top 3 teams in the West next year, but I think they'll retool. It's going to be an interesting summer.
Yeah. Well, where do they go from here? Number one, Tim Duncan. I don't think he should retire. I think he definitely has a couple years of productive basketball left in him. And the contract he was on for the past few years, 3 years, $9 to $10 million a year, is a very fair contract. If he wants to come back, I don't see any reason why the Spurs should not give him that type of deal. Now, they have a lot of key free agents, like you said, like Manu Ginobili, who's been big for them. Granted, he's older, and he even said he can't do it, as consistently as he used to, given his age.
He knows that. Yeah.
He knows that. Danny Green, who has become a very good 3-and-D guy.
Yeah.
And Bellinelli. The thing is, there's been talk that they're going to go after LaMarcus Aldridge. And the one thing, if you look at the Spurs between Parker, Manu, and Duncan, they've all taken pay cuts these past few years, which has allowed them to have this really deep roster. Now, if they go after LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm guessing he's going to want the max contract, whatever it is,
Oh
4 years, $88 million, whatever
sure, whatever
the
it is. Yeah,
number is. And given the fact they're going to have to extend Kawhi, I wonder, are they going to have any money left over to have a deep roster? And that's been their biggest edge against other teams, is that they're so deep that, once their starting five comes out, they have another starting five that can come in and hold the lead, if not add to it. I think that's going to be a big thing for their in terms of their identity next year. If is Are they going to be as deep if they get LaMarcus Aldridge? And I mean, they're going to be really good if you have a core of
sure.
Tony Parker, Aldridge, Duncan, and Kawhi. You're
Yeah,
going to be contending, but it could be a different type of Spurs team.
yeah, different type of Spurs, and I think you can hit the nail on the head. We don't know, or at least I don't know, because I haven't looked at the finances right now. Can they get LaMarcus on a max and keep Kawhi on a big deal
They
and still have Duncan return? Like, can they do all that? I don't even know.
that I'm not sure. I know that they didn't extend Kawhi last summer because they wanted
Just see how it play out.
see how it plays out, and they said that if they extend him this summer as a restricted free agent, it would help their cap. I'm not again, neither of us are capologists, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they can sign both.
Okay.
But I have a question though. Given the outcome of this series and the way Kawhi played for the past 3 days, do you still think the Spurs will give him a max contract, or come to him and ask him to take a little bit less than the max?
That's an interesting question, and I think it's a two-parter. The first is, what is a max player? And to that I answer is, in today's NBA, with the upcoming cap increases, a max player doesn't mean you're a top 10 player in the NBA or top 8 player in the NBA. That's what maybe a max used to be. Like, top 8 players should be maxes, right? But in today's NBA, because the cap's going to go up in a couple of years, this whole $15 million a year issue means that guys like Kawhi, guys like Draymond, guys like, shockingly, DeAndre Jordan might be commanding huge salaries come this summer. So in that sense, I think, relatively speaking, it's not the worst signing in the world if Kawhi is signed at 15. It's a lot. I understand that, but I was like the first one to say it. I said, like, his last 2 games were subpar. They weren't. He didn't play well enough, and that's a fact. But I think we also have to remember his age. He's not going to get worse suddenly. He had a great season, actually. Like, when he came back from injury this year is when the Spurs really started rolling, and he was the Finals MVP last year. So I don't think he's not worthy of that. But I think it's more to do with the fact that, what is a true max player? In the past, we used to think of max players as the LeBrons, the Kobe's, and stuff. But we've really gone away from that in the NBA now, and it's almost like every team has 2 guys maybe that they throw the max at. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think he's not there yet. I think as a max player, I don't think he's there yet where he can be your number one option, undisputed option on a contending team. Right now, I mean, he's a disputed option because they have so many. But at the same time, I've seen enough where I do see that he could develop into that type of player, and that's the NBA these days. You have to, like, sometimes roll the dice that maybe you pay a guy, and, like, for example, James Harden, Daryl Morey gave him a full 5-year, $80 million max extension, and kind of rolled the dice and saw what it developed into. So
that's actually a great point, because people have revisionist history now that Harden's a legitimate MVP candidate. Mm-hmm. When he was given that, it wasn't just OKC who was kind of balking at it. It was a lot of players were like, "Are we sure he's a max? He's actually coming off the bench, blah, blah, blah." So that was a roll of the dice. That's a great point to bring.
Yeah. And that's really the way I kind of see it. I mean, I know, like, on Twitter and even, amongst us, I've been very critical of Kawhi, but I still would gamble. Even if the Spurs say, we'll give you like 5 years, 60 million, whatever, and if a team like the Celtics is genuinely interested in him, I would definitely offer him a max contract.
Yeah.
But I think he definitely still has some growth.
Oh yeah, I think he would be the first to tell you that, and I think Pop would agree too.
Yeah,
That he's not the finished product. He still needs to work on some stuff.
Mm-hmm. So the Spurs, they've been notorious users of the HackaShaq defense, especially in this series we saw with DeAndre sending him to the line 16 to 20 times a game. Given the fact they lost this series, do you think the NBA will still look at changing this rule of intentional fouling?
I think the NBA will look at it, but at the same time, I come back to the point I always make about the HackaShaq or HackaJordan or whatever. It's a technique that really only affects maybe 5 guys in the NBA, maybe 7. I can't even name 5 guys that like it's effective against. So to change the NBA rule just based on 5 guys who play critical minutes and are unable to hit 50, more than 50% of their free throws, it seems kind of weird because all you have to do is shoot like 65 to 70% of your free throws, and no one's going to keep doing it. So that's my only thing against it. Yes, is it not the most aesthetically pleasing style? Agreed. But I think everyone who's critical of the strategy will admit that if their own team was doing it, they'd be perfectly happy as long as they win those games. And even in this game, was it Game 7, the Spurs did it. Doc had to pull DeAndre out, and the Spurs had like 12 second chance points or something crazy in the fourth quarter. So it worked to keep them in the game because the Clippers were hitting all their shots. The Spurs weren't getting going, so they had to do something. So they threw in that strategy, and they actually closed in within whatever it was, 2 points, or they tied the game, and then Chris Paul won it. So I would argue it's still a valid strategy. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. If I was on the other end of it, I'd hate it. I agree. But if I was doing it, or if I was supporting a team that was doing it, I would also say like, hey, make your free throws and we'll stop doing it.
I'm kind of torn a little bit on this issue because I sometimes actually like this just aesthetically. I sometimes like it. I always think it's interesting, like seeing won't he make it? Are they going to get
the psychological move? That's what it is.
Rebound.
Basically, a psychological move to get the other team out of their rhythm. That's what it is.
It's more like but I just literally watch like. I feel like if I gamble, I mean obviously I can because against my religion, but it would be the ultimate prop bet type of thing. Is he going to make this next one? Is he not?
Yeah.
And but for me, I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there in playoff games in the fourth quarter. You want to see these games won. You want to see these teams play their best and do what they do best and make the other team stop it. And I think with this HackaShaq method, it's hard for me to put an argument for this sometimes because what you say is obviously true. Make your free throws, but I think now teams use it so frequently, so much
it's
that
not
as
just
their
the Spurs.
primary.
I mean, a lot of teams do it. The Rockets, the Mavs have all done it this season, and been successful at it.
Yeah. I just think that had the Spurs won this series, maybe sending DeAndre Jordan to the line a few more times, like if Doc hadn't taken him out and they sent him to the line like 5 straight times and the Spurs ended up holding on to this game, I think there might have been even more of an outcry to change this rule. But I think the Spurs maybe losing the series and the Clippers finding a way to overcome it, I think will allow cause this issue to be tabled, one more season.
I think it probably will be tabled. And, just coming back to the Clippers, they ended up winning it, so they withstood it. But it's interesting, like not only is DeAndre one of the few players who this affects, but if GM Doc had got a adequate big man backup, they wouldn't have this issue. They could just put in the backup and he could still make free throws. But GM Doc, as we know, is a lot worse than Coach Doc.
Oh yeah, GM Doc. I
has no clue what he's doing.
I'm not sure. I think GM Doc team president Doc should
whatever he is,
fire GM Doc and hire another GM and maybe work with him side by side, because it's not working. I mean, when you look at this roster, I know we're going off a little tangent here. I'm just shockingly surprised how bad their depth is. They don't, as good as Matt Barnes played this series. Still, I don't think
he's not.
He's not a starting small forward in the NBA.
Yeah,
and I hope he's not listening, because I don't want any backlash from him.
I don't think Barney's listening.
Okay, and on their bench, I mean, Austin Rivers, I've said, is a poor man's version of Jeremy Lin. No offense, Jeremy.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I said Austin Rivers, right? I didn't say Jamal. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Jamal Crawford is solid. He's solid, so I'll give him that. I think Jamal is and definitely could be on any NBA bench. I'd take him on the Rockets. But after that, I mean, Hedo Turkoglu's corpse.
Yeah, he was like untying and tying his shoelaces like all series. I don't know.
I saw him at halftime eating a banana and drinking water in the locker room, and I'm thinking, you're probably not going to get on the court. Are you really that depleted in your electrolytes?
Hey, maybe he's using the bike or something.
Yeah. I don't know. And Spencer Hawes, they gave him a 4-year, $20 million contract, but he didn't hit the court except for like a couple times this series.
That's another classic GM Doc move that's not, it hasn't paid off so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, going off another tangent, but DeAndre Jordan's going to be a free agent this summer and could command $15 to $20 million on the open market per year. What should the Clippers do, in your opinion, in regards to DeAndre?
It's funny because, I was prefacing the whole Kawhi thing and saying that the Spurs should just give him the max or he's still worth the 15. But something inside of me, I still find it hard to say you should give DeAndre Jordan $15 million. I don't know why. I understand. I've seen his stats. He rebounds a lot and he changes shots at the rim. But it seems like a lot of money. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when, the Pistons were like the contender. And I would just wonder, I'm like, is Ben Wallace really a multi-all-star player? Like, is he really that? Is he really worth that much money? I understand, like DeAndre's got some very, very valuable skills, but...
He's Blake's best friend.
Yeah, maybe that helps. But it's a lot of money. And, let's be honest, at the end of the day, he's probably going to end up getting something close to that. If it's not for the Clippers, he's going to go to, Dallas or somewhere and get something like that. Mark Cuban has shown he's not afraid to overpay guys. He did it with Parsons, so I could see him doing it again with DeAndre. But it's a tough sell, but like I said, I think it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think he's worth that kind of money, just given the fact he only plays one side of the court, and offensively, outside of a point-blank dunk or alley-oop, there's really not much else to his game. Part of me feels this might be the next mistake GM Doc makes, giving him $100 million, because once you do that, you're sort of locking yourself into that core, that trio. I don't know how numbers will work with the increase in the cap space, salary cap. But if you extend him, that may not give you much flexibility.
Well, that's it. They have to. They made their bet, and they got to sleep in it at that point.
Exactly. And in today's NBA, flexibility, ability to add another guy or two every summer, it's key. And going back to the Rockets, that's probably the team I know the best.
Yeah.
Last summer, that's one thing Daryl Morey said was the reason he didn't match that contract they gave Chandler Parsons, because had he done that, he would have had no flexibility to go out and add other players to improve this roster. And we saw that by not matching it, he had flexibility to trade for Corey Brewer, sign Josh Smith, Trevor Ariza, so on and so forth. So I don't think he's worth that money. I think he's definitely like $10, $12 million player. But I'm sure there's some team out on the market that will give him that money. Maybe the Celtics. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Sorry to belabor the point, but do you think the Clippers win this series with Vinny Del Negro as their head coach?
Hey, like I said, Vinny's a fighter. So I think he would have gone tooth and nail down to the wire. But if I'm really honest with myself, probably wouldn't have.
I I I think it maybe goes 6 games.
Maybe, yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
let's be honest. Like, you know, fantastic performance by the Clippers. But percentage-wise, how much credit do we give Doc versus how much credit do we give Chris Paul? I always say this, and I'll say this forever. Even in 2008, when the Celtics won the title, how much credit do we actually give Doc Rivers, the coach, not motivational speaker, but Doc Rivers, the coach, versus what Paul Pierce, KG, Ray Allen, and Tibbs' defense did?
I'm glad you mentioned that last point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to argue with that one because, I mean, 2008, the Celtics, they were loaded. I mean, those 3 guys are in their prime, even if it was just for 1 year.
Yeah, they were in their prime.
They were in their prime. And Thibodeau just had a great system on defense that was sort of their crutch, their stepping stone to that, what helped them.
And people forget that Celtics team was actually poor offensively. So basically, they rode their defense, and then Paul Pierce would hit big shots in the fourth and bring them home.
That's when he was regular Paul Pierce, not. That's why they brought me here, Paul Pierce.
Yeah, not old man.
Yeah,
old man, get off my lawn, Paul Pierce.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, definitely, I think the will factor by Chris Paul was huge. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think Doc as a motivator, I think definitely he's head and shoulders above Vinny Del Negro. As a tactician, I'm really not sure.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. So in the next round, the Clippers and the Rockets are going to play each other. They went 2-2 against each other in the regular season. How do they match up in this series?
You know, it's going to be interesting. I think the Rockets, for them to win this series, and I think they have a puncher's chance. I think they have a legitimate chance, not even a puncher's chance. They have to take game one. Chris Paul's questionable, and even if he does return, I think he'll be hobbled. The Clippers are really going to be out of gas in that first game because the game starts tomorrow, Monday. Rockets have had a lot of rest. Dwight, he's played himself into really good shape, shown that like by pacing himself and not being like having to be that go-to guy, he's come into nice form. And Harden's been Harden, carried the team the whole year. So I think they're all rested, they're ready to go. So I think the Rockets need to come out and come fast in game one. And if they win that game and put the Clippers on the back foot, I think they have a legitimate chance to beat them.
Yeah. I think for the Rockets, James Harden has to play like an MVP. He can't have a subpar series. If he has a series where he averages like 21 points, shoots 37% from the field, I don't think they're going to – I think they'll have a difficult time winning this series. He has to play well. He's – whatever the Rockets have needed him to do this season, he's done it, whether it's being a passer, being a scorer, defender, whatever. And he has to continue that. Looking at some of the matchups, CP3, if he gets healthy, I mean, we're not sure what's going on with his hamstring, but if he can get 85, 90%, the Rockets have no real answer for him. I think the key for them is in close games, go to a bigger lineup. Maybe put Trevor Ariza or Corey Brewer on Chris Paul and let James Harden run the offense. When you look at their front courts, we have Dwight Howard and Josh Smith and Terrence Jones going up against DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin. I know the Rockets are my team. I love them, but I think the Clippers have the edge here. I mean, Blake Griffin right now is playing at another level. I mean, I think he's put it all together and he's figured it out. And DeAndre Jordan has been great defensively, and he's always given the Rockets problems just because of his mere size. When James Harden or Corey Brewer, whoever drives into the lane, DeAndre Jordan can just inhale whatever they throw at him. And on the Rockets side, Dwight Howard's been playing well in that kind of like that DeAndre Jordan role, defend the ball, defend the paint, rebound. But offensively, he struggles against athletic bigs and bigs with size. So I wouldn't be surprised if that continued here. Josh Smith is going to be the wild card. We need more good Josh Smith, where he's not turning the ball over. He's getting other guys involved, hitting his shots. And Terrence Jones, he also has to step up and play well. Coaching wise, I guess you have to give Doc the edge since he has more experience. He's won a title, but Kevin McHale, to his credit, he's coached really well this season. He's made great adjustments in games, in series adjustments, and just really done a good job motivating his guys. And the Rockets definitely have the edge in terms of depth, especially with Corey Brewer and Josh Smith coming off the bench. And I think that'll be interesting to see is, can the Clippers continue to play well and win another series with no bench essentially outside of Jamal Crawford.
Yeah, just a final point on that series. I would say, besides the fact that I think they really need to win Game 1, for the Rockets to win this series, my prediction is Josh Smith has to be the X factor in 4 out of these 7 games. Like, I feel if he's the X factor and he gives you 4 great games, I think the Rockets can win the series.
Yeah, agreed. He was the X factor for us against Dallas.
Yep.
And so I think the one reason I liked this matchup for the Rockets versus the Spurs, even though the Spurs, I feel the Rockets would have had an advantage in the front court as well as at shooting guard against the Spurs. There's no threat of hack a Dwight. There's no threat of hack a Josh. If they hack a Dwight, us will hack DeAndre Jordan. And if they take him out of the game, then that's great for us because then James Harden will just attack the paint relentlessly. I think that is something that's going to be big for the Rockets.
I agree.
Although I think it would be entertaining to see Kevin McHale and Doc Rivers just go hack a Dwight, hack a Jordan back and forth.
Yeah.
Because, Dwight's like 55% free throw shooting.
Yeah.
And DeAndre's 28%, 37%.
On another level, yeah.
The numbers definitely will be in our favor.
Yeah. We could have like a 65, 62 point NBA series.
Look, if that's what this series turns into, where it's just
those 2 guys,
those 2 guys just shooting free throws intentionally back and forth, then I think the NBA will definitely change.
Yeah, then we might.
Yeah. How do we look at the Clippers as they enter the series? A team that's gassed physically and mentally after defeating the reigning champs, or a team that gained valuable experience against a team that's as experienced and disciplined as the Spurs and will be better going forward? Like, how do we look at this? How do we look at the Clippers going forward?
I think the Clippers, they're in that win now mentality. They're not like some young Bucks upstarts or anything like that. So I think for them, I feel as though they laid everything on the line. They gave everything they had to beat the Spurs. And I really do think they're going to come into at least the first 2 games of the series and be gassed. So it's going to be really, really interesting without a significant bench if they can beat the Rockets. And like, I know more people are giving the Clips the advantage, and that's because Blake and Paul are 2 of the best 3 players in the series, right? We agree Harden's right up there, but they have 2 of the top 3.
In no specific order.
Yeah, those are the 3 order, but I'm saying they have 2 of the top 3.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt, definitely.
So it's kind of like there's a lot more weight on Harden's shoulders, but the fact that they're gassed and the fact that they have 0 bench, I think it will come back to hurt them.
Yeah. I think Game 3 is going to be the most critical game in this series because if Chris Paul misses Game 1, I think the Rockets will take it. And if they hold home court in Game 2, now all of a sudden the Clippers could be down 2-0 going into Game 3. Or even if it's split, it's going to be huge for both teams to get that advantage in Game 3.
Yeah.
But as physically and mentally exhausting as this series was for the Clippers, I think that this whole season in terms of depth has sort of been you made your bed and now you have to lay in it. So I think eventually they'll fill that gas tank up a little bit. But what they went through in that last series where they had to play great defense and just execute and stop getting on the refs and just play basketball. I think that was an invaluable experience for them that I think they really learned and grew as a team. And I think that experience will help them against the Rockets or whoever they face going forward. If they beat the Rockets, that we've been here before, we've done it. We just got to play our game. I think that's really going to help them in the next round.
Agreed.
Yeah. Um, can either the Rockets or the Clippers beat the Warriors?
Short answer, I really don't see it happening. Longer answer, I think the Warriors have shown like a sustained amount of excellence over the season and they have so many different weapons, and it's not just on offense, but it's also defensively. They've shown they're a top two defensive team and a top offensive team in the NBA. And the Clippers on the one hand have a really small bench, like have nobody, and the Rockets, I think, they had a couple of injuries coming into the playoffs, but just looking at those three rosters, it's hard to pick the Clippers or the Rockets over the Warriors.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my objective hat on here. When I look at Rockets versus Warriors, I feel the Warriors do what the Rockets do, just better. They're a better defensive team. They're a better three-point shooting team. They're deep. They have multiple guys they can rely on. I think if the Rockets face the Warriors, I think I'd be rooting for the Rockets. I'd hope the Rockets win, but I think the Warriors would definitely be the favorites in that series.
Yeah.
Looking at the Clippers against the Warriors, again, the Clippers facing the Spurs in the first round series, I think that was an invaluable experience for them that I think it would help them against the Warriors. I think they'd have a good shot against the Warriors. It's just, can they play the same type of series they did against the Spurs again against the Warriors? Can they dig deep into that well and just grind out a 7-game series? I mean, that's asking a lot, I feel, for a team to play that type of series 2 times in a postseason.
I agree. I mean, and like everyone's gonna bring up the whole Warriors haven't done anything, blah blah blah, and we can hear those kind of stories all the time. But the reality is, we're comparing them to two teams who haven't really done anything either. So between those three, just looking at the stats and kind of looking at the eye test, you would say the Warriors are the favorites. I would go so far as to say, even if the Warriors don't win the NBA title this year, every series they play, they're going to be the favorites. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. And real quick, let's just look at Bulls versus Cavs. What are your thoughts and takeaways going into the series?
Yeah, for our listeners out there, I know it's been a little bit of a longer podcast, but just to wrap up, I'm super, super pumped about the series. The Bulls lost like 3 seasons, where we were supposed to be contenders, and we just never had a chance to like get back and like face the Cavs with like a full strength squad. We've got everyone ready now. D-Rose is not the D-Rose he was, but he's still there on the court. Jimmy Butler's coming into his own as an all-star player. At the end of the day, objectively speaking, there's no way the Bulls are not the underdogs. We're always the underdogs because you're facing LeBron. When you're facing LeBron, LeBron's always going to be the favorite, I would say, in terms, especially in the Eastern Conference. So it's going to be a really, really tough series for the Bulls. I give us a puncher's chance. I'm not going in saying, we're going to win for sure. And I think we have a legitimate chance, but I think it's going to require our front line to like really, really overpower the Cleveland. And we never really got an idea during the regular season how the Bulls are going to match up against the Cavs, because usually either the Cavs or the Bulls had injured players during that series. And we know Kevin Love's out, but I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. He's not playing. So I'm just looking at the Cavs as they are. You could argue that the Cavs have the 2 best players in the series, but I could counter with, that's definitely true. The Bulls probably have the next 5 best players, maybe. So I think that's how it comes down to. It's going to be a good series. Objectively speaking, yes, the Cavs are the favorites. They're more likely to win. But I really do think the Bulls have a puncher's chance.
I think the Bulls have more than a puncher's chance. The loss of Kevin Love, I feel, really evens the gap between these two teams. I think it's the Cavs. I think are the favorites, but
Yeah.
not by a lot. And what I'm curious to see is how the loss of Kevin Love and if they put in like Tristan Thompson or Sean Marion, how is that going to affect the way the Bulls defend LeBron and Kyrie in terms of spacing? Like the one thing with Kevin Love is you have to respect his 3-point shot, and that really opens up driving lanes for LeBron and Kyrie Irving. Are those still going to be there without Kevin Love? And how are the Bulls going to play LeBron? Is if he plays the power forward, are they going to go small as well, or are they going to use their biggest asset, which is their size, to just beat him up?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like they asked Thibodeau, and they're asking the players, like, how do you really stop LeBron? And there's no real good answer for that. He's the best player in the game. I think it's going to require multiple efforts on defense by the Bulls. It's going to be a team effort. You've got a guy like Kyrie as a second option, which is an ultimate luxury to have. So it's kind of like pick your poison for the Bulls. We're going to have to try to slow them down the best we can, and we have to accept that one of them will probably go off in every single game. Just because if you focus in on one guy, the other guy will go off.
Mm-hmm. And what's the health status of Mirotic?
Mirotic, I mean, they're saying he should be good to go, but he came back after he got injured. We ended up losing the next couple of games, and he was shaky in that game, that closeout game. He played very limited minutes, so I think that definitely does hurt us because we look at Mirotic as a guy who can stretch the floor. He can actually make plays off the dribble and stuff, and he kind of like spaces that floor for the Bulls, and we really need that against a team like the Cavs. With LeBron and Kyrie, it's going to be interesting. I really don't know what the Bulls are going to do in terms of defensively. Jimmy really plays the 2 for us, but if Thibodeau puts him on LeBron, he wastes all his energy trying to guard LeBron. I don't know if he'll have anything left to play offense.
I mean, how do you see the Kyrie D Rose matchup in terms of D Rose defending Kyrie? I mean, he's got a lot of injuries.
Yeah, he's got a lot of injuries. And,
you think? I mean, and you watch the Bulls, way more than I do. I mean,
yeah.
Defensively, how do you think D Rose is going to?
D Rose, the reality is, especially after his injuries, he struggles on defense, and the Bulls, what they do is to kind of help him with that, we switch everything. We never have the guy break through the screen, so we switch everything. What that ends up happening a lot is a big like Noah or Taj will end up being on Kyrie or whoever the ball handler is, LeBron or whoever it is, and that can kind of like play into the Cavs' hand because then you're having a mismatch. Then they know that the paint will be cleared out if one of the big men step out, and it's going to be a battle. I think it's really going to be tough. Rose is going to. The only way I feel Rose has got to play against Kyrie is not just like put everything he's got on defense, but he's got to make Kyrie work on the offensive end, and that means attacking the basket. Rose, he sometimes, ever since come back from injury, he gets too caught up in taking threes, and it really hurts him when he does that. He's got to attack the basket, make Kyrie run on defense. If you make Kyrie run around on defense, then you hope that he's got a little less left in the tank for offense.
And one last thing, how big a concern or issue or the reality is the Derrick Rose, one day off between games versus his performance when he has when he has 2+ days off?
That's the great thing to bring up, and the stats actually show that when we do have one day off, Rose actually does struggle, and that's part of coming back from another injury.
But from your eye test, I mean, is that like reality or is that just something?
At least in this playoffs, it's been a reality. I've seen it with the Bucks games. Like when we had 2 days off, Rose was fantastic. When it was like 1 day off between those like Game 5 and Game 6, he struggled mightily. And with the Cavs series, I think Bulls play 1 day off pretty much all games except maybe one. I think it's Game 7, but I don't even know if the series will get that far. So it's going to be a real testament. Thibodeau, he's going to have to trust Rose, but at the same time, Rose is going to have to pace himself and hope that he has something left. Like I always say this, and I'm a hardcore Bulls fan. It's about hardcore as you can get. It's put up or shut up time for the Bulls. We just got to lay everything on the line, go out there, and leave the blood on the floor, as they say, and see what happens.
Yeah. It's time. I mean, so much hype now. It's time to play. All right. Well, that concludes our episode today, and definitely we're gonna be coming back. Try to do a podcast after Game 1 of Cavs Bulls and see where we're at and what the takeaways are. So, Aadil, thanks for joining me today, and definitely we're gonna be doing some more stuff. And I'm looking forward to the NBA draft lottery. See who picks
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Yeah. The Knicks are gonna win, guys. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a few extra ping pong balls in there, or maybe the person's reading the winner may not wear their glasses that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, take care, and you can guys catch us on bwaxsports.blogspot.com and on Twitter at bwaxsports. So next time, goodbye.
All right. Bye.